Yama, I'm Jack Evans and you're watching BTN. Here's what's coming up. We find out how skibidi made it into the Cambridge Dictionary. Learn how this young Aussie's online dictionary is keeping a language alive. And meet the Tasmanian student who's helped more Aussies to enjoy BTN. But first today, has anyone ever told you to be more productive? Well, the government reckons the whole country needs to boost its productivity. And last week it held a summit in Canberra to look for ways to make that happen. Here's Ren.
Here we have a business. And like all businesses, the main aim is to
make money.
Correct. How do you do that? Okay, yes, you could do that. But you might not have as many customers, which means less profit. Your other option is to
make more lemonade.
Yes, but do you really want to spend your days and nights squeezing lemons? What you really want to do is boost your productivity. Productivity basically means making the most of what you have. Maybe by finding a way to cut your costs or increasing your output. The idea is to maximise your profits without having to work too much harder.
If you think about it, Australia is kind of like a lemonade stand.
Okay, not really. We do make lemonade, but we also make heaps of other things, like buildings, medicine, piles of valuable metals, meat, Vegemite. Australia measures productivity by comparing the value of all the things we make with the time and effort people spent making them, and the amount of resources they used. If our output is bigger than our input, it means we're being productive. There are more profits and, in theory, everyone gets richer. Yay! Over the years, productivity in Australia has increased in a pretty big way, mostly because of technology. For example, back in 1901, it took around 31 minutes of work to produce 1 litre of milk. Fast forward to 2019, and we're looking at just 2 minutes. Recently though, that upwards productivity trend has started to drop, and nobody really knows why. So, the government's been trying to get to the bottom of it by inviting economists, business leaders and unions to a special summit to look at ways to boost productivity.
Did anyone suggest using a juicer? This thing's awesome.
Well, no. but there were some other big ideas thrown around. For example, a 4-day work week. Instead of working Monday to Friday, that'd mean people work 4 longer days for the same pay. Studies show people get just as much work done, with the bonus of a 3-day weekend.
Each hour and every day that we're at work, we're more relaxed, we're more creative, we have more opportunity to think about things.
There's also been talk about how we can attract more skilled workers, give workers more skills, and make the most of the skills they already have. Others say the key to productivity is making life easier for business owners by cutting rules and regulations, often referred to as red tape. These rules have some really important aims, but can make it harder for businesses to make decisions quickly and efficiently. Speaking of stuff not everyone likes, taxes. Some say Australia needs to change the way it taxes people and businesses to make things fairer, particularly for young people who don't own homes, and to make sure the profits of productivity are shared more evenly. Then there's artificial intelligence, which a lot of people reckon is the next big thing when it comes to productivity. Experts say AI could cut down the hours we have to work doing boring, repetitive stuff, and some reckon the government should be encouraging businesses to use it. Although others say we need rules to make sure it doesn't do more harm than good. The government says it will take on board all the suggestions it heard at the summit, although it won't be doing all of them, at least not right away. Some say the summit was a lost opportunity and didn't focus on the right things, but others are hoping it'll help put Australia on a more productive path to prosperity.
Protesters in support of Palestine were banned from marching across which Australian bridge on Sunday? It was Storybridge in Brisbane. Protest organisers had to change their plans after a magistrate said marching across the bridge would pose too much of a safety risk. Tens of thousands of people ended up taking part in the protest, which was just one of many around the country.
We want peace, we want sanctions on the Israeli government, we want the aid to get through.
And we're here to let the Palestinians know that we're behind them.
It came days after famine was officially declared in parts of Gaza City, which Israel is preparing to take over.
We will deepen the damage to Hamas in Gaza City, a stronghold of governmental and military terror of the terrorist organisation.
How much was Qantas ordered to pay for illegally sacking more than 1,800 ground workers during the pandemic? Was it $9 million, $90 million, or $900 million? It was $90 million.
This is the largest penalty handed down for a breach of industrial relations laws in 120 years.
A new study has found that birds in artificially lit cities do what? Sing longer, fly higher, or build smaller nests. It found that birds in the brightest places sing for an average of 50 minutes longer every day. Researchers aren't sure what effect the extra tweeting, chirping, and warbling might be having on the bird's health. Astronomers in the US have caught a rare glimpse of an exploding star, an event known as a what? Supernova, nebula, or pulsar? It's a supernova, and this one was unlike any that have been seen before. Just before exploding completely, the star was stripped of its outer layers, making it possible to observe its inner layers for the first time.
So it gives us a better understanding of what's happening in just a normal star's interior, which is also very cool.
Recently, there have been some big meetings in the US about Ukraine as world leaders look for ways to work towards peace. Sass found out who was at those meetings, what they want, and whether they're any closer to a solution.
It's a famous building that often hosts very famous people. But last week, the White House hosted more VIPs than usual. There were the leaders of France, Finland, Ukraine, the UK, Italy, Germany, the EU, and NATO. Oh, and the US president, of course. Just a few days before, Russia's leader had visited Alaska. All of them had come to the US to talk about Ukraine.
We're all working for the same goal, very simple goal. We want to stop the killing, get this settled.
It's now been more than 3 years since Russia invaded Ukraine. Tens of thousands of people have died, and more than 10 million have been displaced.
We need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners.
And that's what brought Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to the White House. He wants help from his allies to keep defending his country and find a way to end the war. The first thing he wants is a ceasefire, which is when both sides agree to stop fighting so that leaders can negotiate.
It's necessary to cease fire and work quickly on a final deal.
Russia now controls around 20% of Ukraine, and Ukraine wants that land back. Ukraine also wants some protection from future attacks by Russia. That could come from joining NATO, which is a military alliance between the US, Canada, and a bunch of European countries that have all agreed to protect each other. But Russia sees NATO as a major threat and doesn't want that to happen. And President Donald Trump has ruled it out. Which brings us to our next player, Russia. What Russia really wants is territory. Russia and Ukraine have a long shared history, and for many years they were both part of the Soviet Union. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that he still sees Ukraine as a part of Russia.
As I have said many times already, we are one people.
Back in 2014, Russia invaded a Ukrainian region called Crimea. While it's now officially seen as an occupied territory, Russia wants that to change. It also wants Ukraine to surrender a region called the Donbass. Many people who live here speak Russian and have close cultural ties with Russia. And President Putin says that people there want to join Russia. But many Ukrainians disagree, and losing the Donbass could be a big security risk.
Should these regions be taken by force, this will only set the stage for further and additional invasions by Russia.
This is where Europe comes in.
We all would like to see a ceasefire.
For many European leaders, this war is not just about Ukraine's future. It's also about their own. They worry that if Russia gets what it wants in Ukraine, it could go on to invade other countries.
Our position is clear. International borders cannot be changed by force.
Then there's the US. Since the beginning of the war, America has been an important ally of Ukraine. But when President Donald Trump came into the White House, things became a lot less certain.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now.
You know, the United States isn't really involved in that war. It shouldn't be.
A lot of people were worried about what this meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin would mean for Ukraine.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one.
Which is why, to many, this next meeting came as a relief.
Yeah, well, today's meeting was good and constructive, and there was a real sense of unity between the European leaders that were there and President Trump and President Zelensky.
The US president says the next step is a meeting between the leaders of Russia and Ukraine. But for now, there's no plan for a meeting or a peace deal. Meanwhile, attacks in Ukraine are continuing, while the world hopes there one day will be an end to this war.
The Soviet Union was also known by which 4 letters? It's USSR, which stands for the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The Cambridge Dictionary has just added 6,000 new words and their meanings to its collection, including some that you might know if you spend too much time online. It got Jen wondering, how do new words make it to the dictionary, and how does language change over time? Check it out.
Are you familiar with the broligarchy? Do you know what that means?
No. Broligarchy. Is it like a fruit?
Just like a broligarch.
What springs to mind when I say skibidi?
Are you swearing at us?
Skibidi toilet. Don't know. All I know is it's something to do with a toilet. Skibidi reads something.
Delulu is not disolulu.
How about delulu? Do you know what delulu means?
Sounds like a dog's name.
Well, it's official. Skibidi is now in the Cambridge Dictionary, along with a bunch of other words like delulu, broligarchy and tradwife. And don't laugh too hard if people older than you struggle to understand them. They too had their own version of IYK lingo.
Sick? Is that old?
Sick, mate. Fully sick.
Ace it up.
A radical, cool dude, man, see.
Tops. Yeah, tops.
Yeah, tops is good. Yeah.
Tops is cool.
You see, language changes all the time. In fact, if you were to bump into a time traveller from a few hundred years ago, "Excuse me, madame, might you furnish me with the directions to the apothecary's establishment?" You'd probably struggle to understand what they're saying. Babes, please, that made 0 sense. Be so for real right now.
Language changes as fast as we need it to in order to keep up with the things that we want to talk about.
Andrea is a linguist, and she says there are all sorts of reasons why the English language changes. For example, when it mixes with other languages.
Over the years, English has borrowed a whole heap of words from other languages, like doppelganger from German, tsunami from Japanese, or déjà vu from French.
Borrowing is a really natural phenomenon because, like people, no language is an island. All our languages kind of mix as we mix with each other.
Different places also put their own spin on language.
She said, "Oh man, I need the dunny."
Overseas, Blueies fans found themselves having to figure out a whole bunch of Australian words. Sometimes words change their meaning over time. For example, a catfish going viral doesn't actually mean a fish with the flu, and flexing online isn't strictly showing off your muscles to your mates.
And sometimes we have to make up new words to describe something that didn't exist before, like emoji, internet, or e-scooter.
In English, probably the most common process that gives us new words is compounding. When you take one word and then another word and you stick them together, and sometimes you spell them as one, like tradwife, sometimes you don't.
She says young people are usually responsible for inventing new words, which is probably why a lot of these new ones come from social media.
Young people, as long documented, well before social media and internet was even a thing, they're the people that are most creative.
To the Sigmas of Australia, I say that this goofy air government have been capping, not just now but for a long time.
Of course, not all new words stick around, and that's something lexicographers, the people who make dictionaries, look out for.
Not necessarily also that they'll stick around, but also that they're important words that we want to document for future. I mean, skibidi is a funny choice, isn't it? And I think when it first came out, I don't think anybody kind of predicted, oh yeah, this one.
They are delulu with no salulu, Mr. Speaker.
Skibidi.
Now, speaking of dictionaries, you're about to meet a young Aussie who's created her own. Mikayla's family are among the very few speakers of Ngiyampaa, and she wanted to find a way to keep her language alive. Check it out.
Dinner means feet. Nuni, long way.
This is Mikayla, and what you're listening to is a First Nations language that fewer than 50 people can speak, Ngiyampaa.
For me, Ngiyampaa is part of who I am. It's my family, it's me, it's my identity.
Mikayla went to school in Ulladulla and Canberra, but during school holidays, she'd travel about 1,000 k's to Menindee to visit her nan, Auntie Beryl Carmichael.
I'm Beryl Carmichael. My traditional name is Yungudu, which means I'm a wild turkey.
I'd go out on country with my nan and she'd tell me all these stories, and she'd tell us the dreamings and she'd sing us songs. And then once I started looking into that and I, looked at how my nan was the last person who could speak it, then it really started to I started to think about it all the time, and it became very important to me.
Her nan died last year and was one of the last people to grow up speaking Ngiyampaa. But since then, Mikayla's made it her mission to keep her family's language alive by creating an online dictionary of Ngiyampaa words.
Right now I'm focusing on documenting everything from my nan and her memories. This is a book that she wrote in 1986, and most of the book is just her poetry and stories that she's written, but at the end she's got a bunch of Ngiyampaa words that she's documented.
Ngiyampaa isn't the only First Nations language at risk of being lost. As you might already know, Australia is home to more than 250 indigenous groups, each with their own language. But since colonisation, many of those languages have disappeared because for a long time, First Nations people were banned from speaking them. It's why many people are working to keep First Nations languages alive.
So we think over the past 5 years, there's been at least a doubling of communities working really hard to strengthen and revitalise their languages.
Today, a lot of First Nations languages have online dictionaries. The use of traditional place names is becoming more and more common, and schools and universities now offer First Nations language classes. As for Mikayla, she hopes that this project will mean future generations can speak the language of her ancestors for many years to come.
It is very special for me, and I do feel like I'm keeping her alive, and she was one of the most important people in my life, and she still is. And I really look up to her, and I hope to have as much of an impact on community as she did.
The AFL minor rounds have just about wrapped up, with the Adelaide Crows finishing their season on top of the ladder. But Isaac Rankin won't be playing the next 4 games after being handed a suspension for using a homophobic slur on the field.
The language used was offensive, hurtful, and highly inappropriate. Importantly, this incident was called out by the players and ultimately acknowledged by Isaac himself as wrong.
Rankin has apologised for his language, and he will take part in Extra Pride in Sport education. Australia's Wallaroos have kicked off the Rugby World Cup in England with a win for the record books. They smashed Samoa 73-0, Australia's biggest ever win in the competition. Winger Desiree Miller led the first half charge, scoring a hat-trick and taking the side to 45-0 by half-time.
A World Cup hat-trick!
By the end of the game, Australia had scored a whopping 11 tries.
Yeah, really proud of the girls. I think we said we wanted to start strong and build in this competition, and that's just the start.
And speaking of record thumpings, Australia's men's cricket team has scored its biggest ever ODI total on home soil. They managed a whopping 2 for 431, beating the South Africans by 276 runs. Travis Head scored the first Aussie century of the day, nearly taking out Mitch Marsh in the process, before Marsh scored a century of his own. Not to be outdone, Cameron Green took home a third century. The win was a nice consolation prize for the Aussies, who lost the series to South Africa 2-1.
Finally today, we're going to meet Reese. He's a Year 5 student from Tasmania who recently helped to make a big change to BTN by asking to include audio descriptions. Let's find out what that means.
Hi, my name's Reese and I am in grade 5 and I attend Austin's Ferry Primary School. I'm really excited to be on BTN. My class watches BTN every week with my awesome teacher, Miss Kearns. My sighted classmates can see pictures and videos on the screen, but I need them described to me.
A collage of colourful images, including Parliament House in Canberra, an erupting volcano.
Wiz enters his living room and is shocked to notice you are watching this show.
Excuse me? Audio descriptions are a thing that you put on a movie or TV show to help blind and visually impaired people listen to pictures on the screen.
Puppy Bingo is red. Her older sister Bluey is blue.
Audio descriptions help blind people increase their understanding of what they're watching. I went to the BTN website and found the form to send them an email.
Dear Sir/Madam, my name is Reese. I am a visually impaired student in Tasmania. Can you please tell me if BTN currently has audio descriptions? If not, is it possible to please get this happening?
A few months later.
Hi Reese, thank you for sending an email to us. I am pleased to say in term 3 we will be commencing audio description on BTN.
Oh, yes!
Audio description is available.
BTN with audio description is so much better. I love technology and I'm really smart at it too. At school, technology helps me a lot. Okay, we're gonna do document see what it says. Here we go.
What could it be? Table start. Written I see.
I also have my Brailliant and I can read Braille that has been embossed onto paper.
Please write a summary of this.
And it's a real game changer. I also work with my TAs. What is a TA? Well, a TA is a teacher assistant that helps the teacher. Here are some of my TAs now. Okay, that's enough of that. My cane is really helpful. My cane helps me walk around the school independently. I can use it to find things and navigate around things. I can also use echolocation, which helps me to know if I'm inside, outside or in big areas. One example of me using AI is the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses. Hey Meta, is there a truck in front of me? Yes, that's great. There's absolutely nothing I can't do without a little bit of practice.
Oh, great work, Reese. Well, that's all we've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the show and maybe learned something. We'll be back next week with more. And in the meantime, as always, you can jump on our website whenever you like and check out BTN Newsbreak or BTN High. Have an awesome week. I'll see you next time. Bye.